We all just went to go see Young Washington, the new movie out in theaters, and we have some thoughts. Boys, you want to get into it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Will, I think you set us up with some categories up here on the board. Is that right?
I did, yeah. We got to be, specific about this. We're going to be talking a little bit about the historical accuracy of the movie. So we got 3 categories of things. We got truths, things that the movie depicted that are true, not true, things that aren't true, and anti-true, things that are the opposite of true. We have a very special guest today,
Hello.
Mr. Tom Ross. Would you like to tell us about your historical background, Mr. Ross?
Yeah. I graduated from Pitt with my undergraduate in history. And
Real history degree. Neither of us
Yes.
have
Yeah.
history degrees.
Neither of us actually do, but
He
you
could be
do.
trusted.
Yeah.
Slightly, I guess I could call myself a historian, although I would give myself a lot of quotes for that.
Mhm.
Don't worry about the imposter syndrome. You're a student of history.
Student of history.
Yeah.
I wrote my undergraduate thesis on the Native American fur trade in the area around this time period. So I spent a lot of time researching, the battles depicted in the movie and the time period afterwards, especially the French and Indian War. So
So if there's anybody that we want here as a reference and as a talking head for the movie that we were all just forced to sit through, some of us twice. You saw it twice, right?
I saw it twice, yeah.
Yeah.
First time for fun, second time for study.
There you go. So I can't think of anybody better to have here and discuss the movies. Do you guys want to get into it?
Yeah, let's get into it.
You guys want to just start with Act 1?
Let's start with Act 1.
All right.
We got a couple of sources, just so you know we're not talking out of our ass. We got
Yes.
Washington, A Life by Ron Chernow, and then
The Crucible of War by Fred Anderson.
Footnotes down in the description if we can remember to do that.
if these 2 books are to be believed, Washington did actually have dysentery during that battle. So he would have been sick, but he probably wasn't asleep when the first shots happened. He would have been on his horse out and about, just a little,
Correct me if
little
I'm
messed up.
wrong. You contract dysentery by consuming human feces, right? I think that's just worth
Is that true?
mentioning. Yeah,
Okay.
that is how you. Yeah.
He had hemorrhoids, apparently.
Oh
And
my
he had
God.
to tie cushions to the horses to he was riding on little pillows. It doesn't really give the same sort of tough guy
No, that
affect
not
as
the same kind
movie.
of Rough Rider knowing you had hemorrhoid pillows on your horse.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So anyways, the disaster is happening. Washington rides up to Colonel Thomas Gage, and he says, where are the Virginians? And Thomas Gage goes, you can't save them. It's not worth it. Come on, Washington. And then Washington sort of mused into the camera, and then hard cut. Washington's 10 years old. His dad is dead.
The first all of Act 1 they do a lot of setting up of who is this young buck who thinks he's someone?
Mhm.
And they lean super heavily and like you said, he kind of mews into the camera often and is I'm the guy, just you wait.
I think one thing that's interesting to note that we glossed over is that when he's talking to General Gage in that first scene, he's
Yeah.
yes, where are my men? And then General Gage is like, you don't have any men. He's like, the Virginians.
Mhm.
Sort of positioning Washington as before this idea of separating from Britain, he's like a Virginia at heart.
He's a provincial. He's
a provincial. He was the first American. This idea kind of, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of reading back what we know to have been the
Yeah.
case later and
Yeah.
assume that he must have already had that kind of antagonism for Britain already.
Yeah,
Which-
probably isn't true.
Yeah.
Right. No, I
Maybe
mean
he didn't like Gage specifically.
Yeah.
I could see that being true, but they spent a good chunk of the first act of the movie setting up the fact that he wanted to be a British officer.
Yeah,
Because his
exactly.
brother, his half brother was, and he was kind of wanted to follow suit.
Mhm.
Which, this is a good time to mention, if you haven't seen it, we just made a video all about young Washington's adventures through Western Pennsylvania, so go check that out after this video. But we got
Complete coincidence. that
complete
we made
coincidence.
that on the same exact
Yeah.
day that the movie came out, if I'm
Yeah,
not mistaken.
completely coincidental. We had nothing to do with that.
I'm gonna go ahead and put some stuff on the board. So I'm
Yeah,
gonna say
let's see it.
true is dysentery. Washington did have dysentery.
He did have the poop disease.
That is accurate. How do you spell dysentery?
I have no
Dysentery?
idea. I
R-
think so. Dysentery.
That looks
Getting back to the movie, so after we get that little prelude about where things are going, we go to a young Washington about 10 or 11, and we see him on the plantation. I'd say notably with a shockingly few amount of slaves.
Yeah. No, they don't show any of his enslaved people. They mention them very offhandedly, that Mount Vernon has slaves, but you never see them.
I think actually the only time I can remember them addressing the slavery thing is when his mom and some of the older folks are talking to him, and they were like, George, you have 11 slaves and 30 acres. And he just stomps his foot and he's like, but I want more than that.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh my goodness, this little brat. We'll get more into the slavery aspect of the movie as we kind of get into the events of the film, but I would say definitely one of the weak points of the movie.
Yeah.
In terms of
It's
historical...
hard to make that, like, feature prominently in your movie that is pretty explicitly intended to make George Washington the hero.
Yes,
because that definitely
absolutely.
complicates your feelings about the man.
Absolutely. And we'll get into that a little bit with the representation of the native people as well, because that was... We'll have some stuff to talk about. There's some fuel for that fire.
We'll also say right now, it's a good time to mention that the studio that made Young Washington is called Angel Studios. They primarily have made very Christian movies. They're based out of Utah, so they're very specifically a Christian American movie studio. So that colors the perspective of the story they tell.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, this was the first kind of historical, put that in quotes, movie that they've really made, right?
Yeah, they got one about Reagan coming out later in the summer. I might call the movie less of a historical movie than a historical fantasy based on a real guy.
It's almost historical fiction-y. I mean, it's like, it takes inspiration from things that happen, sure. There are quite a few times we were laughing audibly in that theater watching the movie.
Yeah.
So, Will, what happens after we get a little bit of perspective into young Washington's life at Mount Vernon? Where do we go from there?
So he meets Lawrence. Lawrence comes up to him at the funeral, and I'm going to put something else on the board. Lawrence hands him a box with some surveyor's equipment. That is true. Washington did inherit some surveyor's equipment from his father. I'm not really sure when that happened, if, Lawrence actually gave those to him at his dad's funeral, but that bit is true.
And his dad did die when he was about, 10 or 11 or so?
Yes. Also, the idea that he would have met Lawrence for the first time at that funeral isn't hard to believe either, since, as we mentioned, he was an officer in the British Navy.
And they were only half siblings, right?
Yeah.
So they were only half siblings, yes. They had the same father, but different mothers.
I have some thoughts on that scene, actually. I think I was looking out for the themes a lot in this movie because, as we said, this is a very conservative studio that produces a lot of very, Christian, American movies, I guess I would say. And I feel like in my interpretation of that scene, he's giving Washington this surveyor's compass, which, it's true, and Washington was a surveyor, which we can talk about in a little bit. But the sort of reverence that he gives it to him with, this is your father's gear. I kind of read that as it almost felt like Washington as a young boy is inheriting this destiny to go map out the West and go conquer the West. That's kind of the story we see unfold.
I think that's true because there's an aspect, at least from a cinema point of view, there is an aspect of foreshadowing of I'm giving you this so that it'll set you up for your journey.
Yeah, and I think the reverence with which Washington is treated in the movie, and he's kind of viewed as this heroic messiah figure. I think it's kind of showing it was always in America's destiny to head west and conquer the West, which we'll talk about a bit more because there's some interesting scenes about that. But I noticed that and I was immediately oh my god, they're already setting up the manifest destiny.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that is an interesting point to talk about because as we mentioned in our video, that was very much a real thing from the get-go. Virginia was chartered sea to sea, and for the purpose, like we said in our video, part of it was they had too many slaves and tobacco plantations that they had depleted all of the topsoil and had no choice but to move to the West.
Yeah, there's so many people coming in from the British Isles or just being born that can't then inherit this large swaths of land. So there's so much demand. People are just pushing forth, even if there are official decrees to not continue forth because they can't protect those people moving out. Those settlers, they're just going and stealing this land anyway.
Yeah, so. But you're right. The movie definitely makes light of it, but B just kind of acts like it is just always predetermined to happen.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It also very much buys into the romance of it all. It just kind of it depicts the scene in particular I'm thinking of comes later when he's describing his what he saw out west to the love interest of the story, Sally Carey, who is a real person. We'll get into that in a moment. But they just kind of uncritically romanticize the expansion of America, which, you know, makes sense. That is how Washington would have felt. He would have had very romantic feelings about the great untamed West.
Yeah.
But I do feel like in a contemporary movie to just continue parroting that idea feels like you're missing a pretty important line of thinking.
I think that's a good point of, like, there's something about this movie, you know, minus the CGI or whatever, that feels like it
And
could have
the
been-
AI.
And the
I think
AI.
there was
There was
some
some
AI in it.
AI usage in this movie.
I'm not sure about it, but I think they used it.
Yeah, don't sue us for defamation or anything, but it
Ooh.
definitely looked
There was a
like
lot
there
of
was some
AI.
artificial intelligence being used. But if you don't take that stuff into account, it kind of felt like the movie could have been made for the bicentennial or something. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it had a 20th century Americana-ness to it.
It
That-
felt like it was going back in time. Like it
Yeah.
felt like a different version of American history that like we've gone past already. Like it felt like we overcame this version of American history, but now it's come back in the Trump era.
It's a little on par with
Yeah.
like it's the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown or what's the Pilgrim one where they all come on the Mayflower and it's like,
Yeah, I think.
oh, we taught the Indians how to use silverware. It's like, okay, I don't think it
Is that
would
what Charlie Brown said?
There's this Mel Gibson movie, I think made in the 90s or 80s. I can't remember. what it's called, but it's like he plays like this signer of the Declaration of Independence and from South Carolina who was like a huge slave owner, but they never showed it in the movie. And he's like this heroic like figure battling the British with like two.
Is it The Patriot?
The Patriot, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it kind of feels like that version of history, rather than like a modern telling of history that's more critical. You know?
It's 250 slot. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
yeah.
Something to make you feel real patriotic about this
Yeah.
great nation of ours. I'm going to put something on the true column again.
Yeah, let's
so
see it.
shortly after Washington gets the surveyor's equipment from his brother Lawrence, Lawrence takes him to the library and hands him a couple of books, one of which is called The Rules of Civility and Decent Behavior. That is a real text that Washington possessed. It was a guidebook. What is it? Rules of Civility. And it's, I believe it's some of the earliest texts that exist about, or earliest texts written in Washington's hand.
Yeah.
And it includes such rules as spit not into the fire, especially if there be meat before it. So
Yeah,
things like that a young man needs to know.
Honestly, that's good
That's
advice.
true.
I hope people at home take that away.
Spit
you
not
know?
into the
Spit
fire.
on the-
I mean, you don't want to spit on someone's meat.
There's
Go
a
ahead.
funny scene in the movie. It's actually made me chuckle. I like the scene where he tries to go, cutting ahead a little bit. Washington goes to enlist as a British officer in the, in Virginia. I think he goes to Williamsburg or something like that, and he hands the general, whoever he's talking to, these writings, which are the rules of civility that he's just copy and pasted basically. And the officer's like, "Oh my god, how much do you write?" And then he's like, "Oh, it's the rules of civility." And he's like, "Oh, so you just plagiarized it."
Yeah, I love
Oh,
that scene.
Yeah.
Because that is kind of like the vibe, like the impression
Yeah.
that I get is like this dude wrote a lot, but none of it was his
Yeah.
thought or idea. It was just like, oh, that's an interesting passage. Let me copy
Yeah.
that for myself.
The revolution, the founding fathers had a lot of great writers among them, and Washington did not produce any lasting texts.
No.
He was not one of them. So do we want to move on to the next chapter of the movie?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Washington is riding a horse, and then I swear to God for a second the horse's legs are AI, but then all of a sudden the horse is different, and then Washington is all grown up. The next major scene is Washington sneaking into a party at Belvoir,
Oh,
which
the
was
soiree.
the Fairfax mansion. The Fairfaxes were a very wealthy landowning family that lived just up the river from them. Lawrence, his brother, did in fact marry into the Fairfax family, so the idea that there would have been a party at the Fairfaxes that his brother was invited to, but he wasn't, that maybe he tried to sneak into. Sure, maybe
you
that
can
happened.
suspend disbelief.
Max, could you
Yeah.
put that under the not true column?
Okay.
Just write like sneak into party.
Let's do
We don't know that didn't happen. There probably were lots of parties.
Yeah.
He tries to get in. The bouncer says, "You don't have an invitation, so you can't come in." So he goes into the basement where the slaves are cutting ice. He awkwardly offers to carry the ice for them, to which they say, "No, don't do that." And then he says, "How do I get into the house?" And then he's in the house. The first time that they depict enslaved people in the movie.
We see his whole property where he does own people don't see any of the enslaved people. First time we do is them just being like smiley and polite. It just feels a little disingenuous to
I would agree.
how that went.
Yeah, it's not a very complete way to describe or to depict that aspect of Virginian society. So that's why it goes under not true.
Yeah, fair.
It's not anti-true, but like that probably didn't happen.
Yeah, you'd think in that time period in Virginia, you would see like a lot of casual brutality, and I know obviously I wouldn't depict that on screen because that's kind of against the message. But if it was a more realistic version of Virginia in the 1700s, I'm sure there would be a lot of casual brutality.
Oh yeah.
Abuse, just like normalized.
Well, and
everywhere.
incentivized too,
Incentivized,
right?
exactly.
I mean, if you guys watch and if you have a spare 10 minutes, look up the Virginian slave codes, and you'll come back a ghost. Like it's actually horrible stuff. But at this point, Washington is now in his early 20s or so, right? Late teens.
It's really
early
not
20s.
clear how old he is.
Sure.
Younger
Younger than us, though, I would venture to say, because this is
Certainly,
still
yeah.
17, 52, 53?
So
Yeah.
in the scene that follows, after he sneaks into the party, he meets a charming young
very
woman.
young lass, we shall say.
Yes, who introduces herself as Sally Carey. She was a real person. Her full name was Sarah Carey. We'll get a little bit more into what their relationship was like, because it's interesting what the movie chooses to include and how they get it wrong.
Am I right in saying that your book had some physical descriptions of this woman?
They did, yeah. I got chalk all over my I'm not trying to mess up your nice paperback.
You may
Oh,
for it.
the-
Do you know what page it's on?
The reason
I do not
I'm
know.
even asking is I just remember the phrase "big bosomed" was involved.
Ample,
Ample
expansive
bosom.
bosom.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Ron Chernow's
Expansive bosom.
Ron Chernow's really good at the mildly horny description of historical figures, which
Oh,
if you're trying to get a
Including
sense of
Washington
them.
himself.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
You gotta know that. So in the movie, he meets Sally Carey, who is evasive and charming. Who knows? Maybe they did meet at a party. They definitely did meet at some point. And then Washington sneaks around. He goes into the office of Lord William Fairfax, played by Kelsey Grammer, and Fraser himself, and he proposes that he go out and explore his holdings, or his Lord Fairfax's properties.
His extensive land claims in the Ohio country.
So what is correct is that Washington was a surveyor for Fairfax. You know what? I'm not even going to put that under the true column, because the more important detail that they get wrong, and I'm going to say this is an anti-true thing,
Uh-oh.
busting out the red chalk.
Yeah.
He did not employ Washington to survey his Ohio Territory properties. It was his nearer properties in the Shenandoah Valley. Those were Washington's first surveying expeditions, were out into the Shenandoah Valley on behalf of William
I was
Fairfax.
gonna actually ask you about that, because I know that's how he got his bones, as like in terms of like reading a compass and surveying land. But they didn't show that in the movie.
No, they make it
just
seem
had
like
him go straight to the Ohio country.
they basically compress what was several years of Washington working full-time as a surveyor for Fairfax in the Shenandoah Valley, and make it seem like his very first expedition was straight to the Ohio country, and that's in that scene in the movie. That whole sequence of events includes him meeting Tenagresan and seeing the French fort, and also falling into the Allegheny River. So they compress
And
several years
it
of
all
surveying
happened
into
like
one.
at or around Pittsburgh too. Like they didn't really go far north. They didn't go like they made it seem like this was all happening in like this one kind of.
Yeah, the Ohio Valley in this movie is tiny. It's so compressed. They just make it seem like it's like
I
is
know.
Pittsburgh. It's like it's just Pittsburgh and the surrounding area. In reality, the Ohio Valley stretched from like the Alleghenies to like the
Kentucky
Illinois
or
Valley.
well, I mean, like it goes
was-
all the way to
it was
Mississippi.
vast.
Yeah.
It was huge.
And that was the other funny thing about this movie, back to just like the AI and CGI of it all, is like in Act 1, like the terrain was super different than it was in the rest of the movie. Like the first act, it was all these big conifer trees and like these big like tundra, Rocky Mountain kind of terrain, and then all of a sudden it was Appalachia.
Yeah.
Like, there was a weird inconsistency there.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm gonna give him some like benefit of the doubt, or like to Steelman the movie,
Yeah.
it kind of makes it feel even more vast when you're seeing
Definitely.
this like weird like different countryside. But yeah, in reality.
But if you've spent any time in Appalachia, you're like, we don't have those trees here.
Yeah.
Like it just.
It's all pine forest.
Yeah, and then later in the movie, it's like mountain laurel and like proper like foliage and everything, but it's the fact that it wasn't like that the whole time was jarring to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you still got that red chalk, Tom,
I will break it.
go ahead and put down mountains. Because they show Washington. Oh, I'm also forgetting. So I skipped over something that I'd also like to put down.
We're all forgetting this video.
It's brought
to you by that history dog. He was there during the French and Indian War.
He's an old dog.
So I'm gonna put one more thing in the green column, because we're fair and balanced here. So I don't want people to
Fair
come
and
away with the
balanced.
impression that we are anti-American. Hello, buddy. Washington haters.
As the folks in the theater.
We did
Yeah.
deeply offend an older couple by laughing at the movie a little bit.
One of our spies was in the bathroom and overheard one of the old folks talking about the un-American kids sitting behind them. So I really, I want to prove my patriotism here by acknowledging the true things.
Yeah, we don't hate America. We just know history.
I'm
That's
actually the
good,
biggest
yeah.
patriot. So the Union Jack, in most shots, except for one, is historically accurate. And specifically, what that means is, so the Union Jack is overlaying three European symbols of heraldry. You got the red plus symbol of England, the white X
of Wales.
of Scotland,
Scotland.
and then the red X
Of Wales.
of, I believe that represents Northern Ireland.
Oh, really?
That last bit, the red X, would not be in a historically accurate Union Jack.
Yeah.
But there was one shot, Tom, if you could put Union Jack in the anti-true column, there was one shot
Wow.
of the governor's mansion that they get wrong.
So that
so-
really is fair and balanced. Huh?
So we're being very fair and balanced. Yeah.
Good job.
So anyways, back to where we were in the movie. Washington meets Fairfax. He gets the job to go out and survey the Ohio country. That is not accurate. He surveyed Shenandoah Valley first for several years. And the other thing that they get wrong, and this is gonna be red.
Uh-oh.
Washington, he needs a buddy. He needs someone to accompany him out into the mountains. So he goes to a tavern and he meets up with his old drinking buddy,
Yep.
Christopher Gist, right? Drunk Gist.
Drunk Gist.
Drunk Gist. Christopher Gist was not Washington's drinking buddy. He was a professional fur trader who would have already been out in the mountains. Now, he was relevant to the story, of course.
Well, I'm willing to bet Gist is going to be in that red column a lot by the end of this.
So, Tom, you seem to know a little bit more about Gist.
I actually
Talk about him.
thought so. I would agree that he would not be Washington's drinking buddy, but when I was doing my paper and reading a lot about fur traders, I read so many books about these people. I think, well, one thing I really hated was their accents, which I think we can do a brief aside on. They were like these
Absolutely.
Texan, like Southern accents when it's like, these are like provincial people.
Well, it was
Yeah.
inconsistent. Like
Very inconsistent.
half of the English people sounded kind of Scottish,
Yeah.
which maybe that is kind of how a contemporary English accent sounded. But then Washington sounded like a 20. He sounds like we would talk,
Yeah.
maybe.
and then
And then the rest of the Virginians sounded
Yeah.
like real
they're
Appalachian
all these
kind
like
of talk like
backcountry,
this.
like bumpkins.
Yeah.
Which is like, and I will say, actually, I think there was some level of truth in how they're depicting these fur traders, because I read a lot of descriptions of these people. They were very.
Hey, the history dog got activated. Give us a second.
Yes. A lot of times these people were like drunkards. These are people that were like willingly head out into the wilderness, risking death, serious injury, and they were often like viewed as like these drunkards, even.
They're like recluses.
Yeah,
kind of, right?
they're these like crazy people that would drink a lot. Even like the more well-respected people like Christopher Gist, who I know a little bit less about, so can't exactly speak on if he was like a drunk, but like people like George Croghan, who was a very like well-traveled agent of Pennsylvania, Andrew Montour, who was a half, I believe he was half Seneca and then half French, but he also traveled for Pennsylvania and the British. These people were like well renowned as being like vile drunkards, and that was kind of the reputation that these people had.
Really?
So
I never knew that.
yeah, it's sort of accurate. Although I would
Okay.
take issue with, yes, Washington probably wouldn't be drinking with them, and
He wouldn't have had to go find Gist
Yeah.
in a
Right.
pub. Gist
Yeah.
would have already been out in the
exactly,
mountains.
yes,
And-
exactly.
Is part of that too just because people can make their own whiskey and
Yeah.
that's a valuable currency to have on the
Yes.
frontier?
It was it was a valuable currency, especially because that was a lot of what was traded, even if it was illegal. Sometimes they would trade rum and other alcohol to Native Americans. And also just the drinking was very normalized back then. It was a very storied past.
Well, especially if
And so I would say that might even go in the green that Christopher Gist, he did indulge, but I think it's fair to go in the red that Washington probably wouldn't be drinking with him. And as you said, yes, he would probably already be out in the wilderness because he was a very prolific fur trader and surveyor in the first place.
So he was known to indulge in a little bit of whiskey, but maybe not in the way that the film.
I would say not in the ways that the films portrayed it.
He was also
Interesting.
significantly older than Washington.
Yeah.
So I think the point in general, I guess I wanted to make by
They're
putting that in the
brothers.
red is that they
They
invent
weren't
a
frat
new
brothers.
Yeah.
They make a new guy and they give him the name of a real guy, and those two characters have nothing to do with
And
each
that
other.
we'll see that continue to play out throughout the movie.
And
Yeah.
I think they also depict Christopher just like, I think he asked Washington like what he's writing one time. Like he has a very like detailed journal. Like his journal is well published. Like he's a very well read man. Like I think he's not like this guy that they're portraying in the movies.
I think you would have to be able to speak a little bit of English, French, Iroquois, like whatever, to be able to be self-sufficient in
Exactly.
a frontier. Like
Mhm.
that's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what follows then is the first sequence of events where Washington goes out to survey the land for Lord Fairfax with the fake made-up Christopher Gist. And during this event, which again, it's compressing several years of surveying experience into one event, Washington meets Tanacharson, who was a real person.
They don't pronounce it that way. They pronounce it like
Tanacharson is how they say it. Which
Tanacharson.
there are credited
I don't know
cultural
enough
consultants
to
for
say.
Seneca in the movie. Perhaps that is the correct way to say it. I might have to take their word
It's
on that.
definitely not how we said it in our video though.
Yeah.
So maybe we got it wrong. But yeah.
We may have.
Mhm.
He meets Tanacharson in the woods. He shows them Fort LaBeouf. And then Washington and Gist fall into
We
the Allegheny
assume it's
River.
Fort LaBeouf. Like they
That's
don't
true. They don't
specify,
specify what
and
fort it was.
they say it's in the Ohio country, so it might be Fort LaBeouf, but that's probably our best guess.
Yeah, it doesn't
right?
look like Duquesne. It's obviously
Yeah.
not on rivers or anything like that. It's
Yeah.
in the middle of a field.
More in the woods.
Just a fort.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a fort. But to be fair to them, it did kind of look like how a fort back then might look. It looked
It-
like
Put that in the green,
I
dude.
would
I
say
think the fort looked good.
Yeah.
It did
was
look like a
actually very
four-pointed
impressed.
star fort.
Yeah, it did look like it. I was very impressed with how they pictured that fort.
So they got the architecture of the fort right.
It might have been AI.
They might have-
CGI.
Oh, I'm sure. So I think I got a couple more anti-true things.
Yes.
Washington's Landing.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
Washington and Gist are rafting down the Allegheny River, which in the movie is some mountain creek in Colorado, probably
Yes.
in Utah.
It was like
probably.
icy rapids, yeah.
That was not the real Allegheny, and then they sploosh, both fall into the river.
Down like a small waterfall.
Yeah, they go down a rapid. I don't think there's rapids like that anywhere on the Allegheny.
No.
Before they had locks and dams, maybe, but I doubt. Like it looked very tundra-esque. Like it didn't look like anything around here.
Yeah, the Allegheny is pretty steady and meandering.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's not a rushing mountain creek, and then they both fall into the water, and then they both swim to safety on a little spit of land that, if you are from Pittsburgh and you're familiar with the real island of Washington's Landing, you know that
pretty
that is not what it looks like. It is way larger. It has like
It
condos.
was literally like a little
restaurants.
sandbank in the
Yeah.
movie. Like it was a tiny little disc, and then but they had that little cute shot of them like cuddled up all through the night.
But you know what? That's probably true.
That probably is true. You can put that in
They
the movie.
probably
Put just cuddle.
didn't cuddle. Because what happened, and of course you should watch the full-length documentary to get the real whole story, but Washington did fall into the water. He was jerked, Jirked, into the water by an ice floe. He claims that he grabbed onto the raft and pulled himself in, but just got frostbite, which suggests he probably
had to
dump himself in to save
Somehow.
which is, another thing they messed up with the Gist Washington dynamic. Gist saved his life twice. He was the older, experienced guy who knew what he was doing.
The movie
They were-
made just the bumbling one, which I think the dynamic was probably flipped.
The exact
right.
I
Yeah.
would probably agree.
That could go in the red.
Yeah.
I'll put just idiot or Christopher Idiot.
Yeah.
Christopher Idiot.
Drunk over here. I would say, I think another thing that I kind of liked, or maybe thought was interestingly well done, was I feel like they depict traveling through the Ohio Valley as like this miserable, horrible thing, which I think is also very accurate. I mean, obviously Washington comments on how beautiful the land is, which is also accurate. I think there was this dynamic of the people, the fur traders, and the settlers who traveled and would remark on the beauty of the Ohio Valley, but it was such a brutal. It was so hard to find food. It was always like the weather was either like freezing or like it was, you know, it vacillated between miserable and beautiful. And it is like very well documented that traveling to the Ohio Valley, basically the edge of British civilization, you know, was this horrible, like, miserable experience. That
They do a really good job of showing that, like, a little bit later in the movie when we get more into the military expeditions and they have to forge the road
Yes,
to get
yes,
there. Like,
that
that
was-
was a very good
I agree.
depiction
I
of.
think that was good.
Because it was like single file road that you couldn't even fit a wagon down. I mean, it was just like one guy at a time, chop the trees, go, go, go.
Yes.
But yeah, so where are we in the plot now? He meets
So
Jess, he falls in the river.
They're
and
cuddling,
They're cuddling.
which again, historically, probably did happen.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would have gotten hypothermia and died. And then this was something that the first time I saw it with my family, they were incredulous to learn that this was real. I don't know if I used that word. They didn't believe that this was
Yes,
real.
yeah.
But the fact that the Allegheny froze over that night so that they could walk across, that did really happen.
Yeah.
So they got that right. That goes with just cuddle. That's
Yeah.
all one of that.
Yeah, that does seem like something that's so miraculous to be like, I made that up, but the fact that that is real is actually really
That was the
interesting.
one part of the movie I didn't mind, like the weird divine intervention angle, because that is just like weird divine intervention. Like it's
Yeah.
just, oh shit, the river froze.
Gist and Washington return to Virginia. This is the moment where, so then they're back in Williamsburg. Washington is meeting with Governor Dinwiddie to share his report. That establishing shot of the governor's mansion is the one that has the inaccurate Union Jack, I believe. Although
didn't
somebody
catch that.
should double check that I got that right.
Sure, yeah.
So he meets with Governor Dinwiddie. Governor Dinwiddie is like, oh, the French, I can't believe they're there. And he says, I have land in the Ohio country, we have to stop this. That was all true. The thing that I'm going to put as not true, because they didn't really mention this, maybe write, like Washington land, because he owned land in the Ohio country, and they omitted this. They make it seem like he was the pawn, which in many ways he was the pawn of the more powerful people in Virginian society. But he himself also was very heavily invested in land speculation. So it was not just he was not just this poor old boy who was getting sent around. He was also an active participant in the land
I need
speculation.
to complain because you
Yeah.
just flagged the memory. How many times in that godforsaken movie did they say, "Even a pawn can take a king"? It would have been a fine metaphor
3 times,
if they didn't say.
3
Like,
times.
dude, I didn't even mind them saying it the third time. It was. They said it like twice back to back in Act 1, and it was just like, you can't hit the audience over the head with the metaphor like that.
I took extreme umbrage with that because it just felt like they were Marvelifying Washington. It felt like a Marvel movie because they were like
Oh, yeah.
clearly, obviously referencing the revolution, like
And,
oh,
and
it's the pawn
foreshadowing
killing
his
the king.
inevitable
Oh
success.
my god! Yeah, exactly. It was just like it made me roll my eyes so many
I
times
know.
in the theater. So I was like, this is like the dumbest.
That's
thing
when we
I've ever
offended
seen
the older people.
by
When we
laughing.
started
Yeah,
giggling at
because it was
that.
so stupid. It was like that, and they had. We can talk about later. There's a lot of other instances where they do that.
Mm.
Make these like allusions to the revolution, and it's just so like
As the plot of the movie progresses, I think we will see more and more of that for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Another thing I would like to put in the not true column is when Washington is receiving his assignment from Dinwiddie to go back out into the Ohio country and deliver the letter. Dinwiddie says, we have a translator, Van Bram, and we'll send him to you. I think that goes under not true because yes, Van Bram did go with them. That's correct. He was a real guy, but Washington knew him already.
It's too
So
yes, that's right.
yeah. In fact, they were family friends, and it is said that he taught Washington how to fence. So the idea that Dinwiddie would have introduced them feels like a not true thing.
Yeah, it was just a plot
yeah.
device. Yeah.
He's a Dutchman, right? Who also spoke French, and that's why they
Yes.
went with him. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So then we have our second major act of the movie where Washington takes an army out to the Ohio country to deliver the letter to the French. He did really deliver a letter to the French, but the first time he did it, he did not have an army. It was just him and Gist. And that was pretty much what the first half of our video covered, is him going out to Fort LaBeouf and coming back.
With Tanackerson and Gist, yeah.
With Gist and Tanackerson, yeah.
They meet with the French at the fort.
They meet
right?
with the French.
They read them the letter, which, to their credit, they got the letter right.
They got the letter right, yes.
Yeah.
The text of the letter was accurate. They did miss
Throw that up.
like a single clause in one of the sentences, but like, that's fine.
It's close enough. Yeah.
About as
It was,
much
uh,
as
Recognized it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was Jumonville the one that they met with? I haven't actually.
No.
He wasn't.
The
Okay.
commander at Fort LaBeouf was named Jacques Saint Pierre.
Yes.
Jumonville was an ensign
at Fort Duquesne.
Yeah, Fort Duquesne, I believe. So yeah,
They were like 100 miles apart or something. Yeah.
And obviously, I'm sure they just did that in order to, make it easier for the audience.
Yeah,
but it was
make the two
untrue.
French guys.
Another
was a
plot
French guy.
compression device, yeah.
I'll put Jumonville and then not true because Jumonville did exist, but he was only one guy. He wasn't both guys.
I have to say though, I think Jumonville or Jumonville, however we pronounce his name, I think he was one of the best characters in the movie.
Certainly the
got
most entertaining.
such a kick.
He was just a mustache twirling.
He was a
villain, like,
big
who was
mustache
stupid.
twirling
Yeah.
French guy. He was
Big old pipe.
rotund. He was smoked a pipe.
Yeah.
He said,
Yeah,
it was
he was
everything about it was
The most
good.
stereotypical Frenchman you could ever make.
Yeah, that's like if you're making America
Yeah.
250 anti-French slop, like that is what you want as the character.
Yes.
It was great.
It was great. Yeah, I would agree.
But so he reads the letter to Jumonville at the fort, and Jumonville's basically like, "We're not going anywhere.
We will never leave.
Yeah, we will never leave."
Which is basically true.
Mhm.
There's
And he,
the record of him at Fort Venango, where he is speaking to the French, and they're having dinner, and then the French get drunk and they say, "We will never leave. The country is ours." So the idea that the French were dismissive of Washington and turned him away, that was basically true. They got the characters and the timeline and the surrounding context wrong,
yeah,
but that idea was correct.
yeah. The gist of a lot of that was
Gist.
that. See what I did?
Yeah.
It was pretty accurate. They obviously just had to compress locations and times and things, but they kind of got the significance through of that part. That was I had less historical gripe with that part of the movie than I did much of the other parts of the movie.
Yeah. At the end of the day, to compress the time and geography does kind of make sense. Otherwise,
Yeah.
the movie
The
would be
movie was
like
already
11
long,
hours
like,
long.
yeah,
It was already really long,
Yeah.
but
So Washington gets the reply from the French, and then what happens next in the film is he leaves his entire army, which again in real life did not have an army yet, leaves his army in the Ohio country, runs back to Williamsburg to deliver the reply to Dinwiddie. That's where he discovers that his boo, Sally Carey, had married William Fairfax.
After they'd been playing tonsil hockey on that by
Oh,
that
yeah.
tree, dude.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they were really like, they were hyping them up for Act 1 of this movie. It's like, oh, this is Washington's fair
Yeah.
young lass, and then he comes back and boom, she's married off.
That it is true that Sally Carey married William Fairfax. However, she married him in 1748, so 5 years before the events of this movie. They kind of, I think that should go under anti-true maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe just write Sally Fairfax because she became a Fairfax many years before. It was not this moment that, the way it's portrayed in the movie is he comes back from his mission while his whole army is still out there, just like waiting for him.
yeah.
Discovers that she's married, and that's like, I don't know, that's his black pill moment where
Yeah.
he decides he's gonna like.
He deserts
Go back
all his
out.
men
Yes.
and then finds the love of his life has taken another man's hand, and then he must go back and fight. Like, yeah, it was a little Hollywood phony baloney for
yeah,
sure.
definitely.
Yeah.
It was a interesting way to spend the runtime. Obviously, like I guess they're setting up like this like B plot of like Washington's like development as a young man, but
But they
Given
didn't
how
need
much-
to.
yeah, given how much happens to him in the short period of time, they really spent a lot of time building up this love story that didn't go anywhere.
I said that to Will, like, it's a hell of a story anyway.
Yeah.
Like, they could have cut all of that, made the movie
Yeah.
a half hour shorter, and it would have gone from a D minus to like a C plus.
or included a lot of the things they like glossed over.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I was also wondering how many of the old timers in the theater were convinced that that was Martha Washington.
honestly, I was for a little bit, and I was like, "That's not her name's not Martha." It was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
who's this lady?
Like, who is this chick?
Yeah.
So now might be a good time to talk about the actual correspondence between Washington and Sally Carey
Yeah.
in real life. So they were not corresponding during his first surveying expeditions, as they make it seem. Little plot hole. This is a very CinemaSins thing, but in that first act, when Washington and Gist are out there surveying, Washington is writing letters to Sally, and then they cut to Sally reading the
Where
letters.
did she get them?
Who's bringing the letters?
Yeah.
They don't
There's no
they have a
mailman.
mail
Yeah.
delivery system.
Yeah.
They're in the middle of nowhere.
They don't have a country.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, oh yeah, send these off to my love back home.
Yeah, I thought of that, and it was like, it's just interesting.
And it's like, I don't know, if you're just there for the 250 slop, you can suspend disbelief, but it is like it was enough of an improbable thing that it was like, well, how is she reading these letters?
Yeah.
They did have a correspondence, however, a couple years later during the Braddock campaign.
Okay.
So during that time, I guess there would have
Seems
been
much more
messengers running back and forth.
Yeah.
Because they would have established roads by that point. to
Yeah.
some degree.
And at that point, she was married, and they were writing. And not only that, but Sally Fairfax insisted that he did not send the letters directly to her, but through a trusted third party. So Sally knew that they were really not supposed to be communicating.
Interesting.
After he returned from the Braddock expedition, she wrote, "After thanking heaven for your safe return, I must accuse you of great unkindness in refusing us the pleasure of seeing you this night." So they were like, they were...
So that,
Dude!
that's a
She
more
was written
interesting side plot
Yeah,
than what they actually showed.
Yeah, it's like actually crazier in real life.
She was
But,
already married when they did that.
That would have kind of played against this version of this moral version of Washington.
And played against
That's
the
true, yeah,
evangelical Christian movie studio. You can't have adulterous founding fathers or
Yeah.
anything. That's
It's true, yeah. I hadn't even thought about
not our
that.
country.
Now I'm thinking about it now is they keep this is like bit that they keep referencing of everyone's asking they're like Washington's fur trader friends are asking him to place a bet, and he's like, "Why don't you wager for me?" Showing that he doesn't gamble.
That's true, yeah.
I didn't even think about
Like,
that.
all right, so he's like vice free completely. I
Did
don't think we see
anybody-
him drink a
yeah.
drop of alcohol either. So which we'll actually touch on because that's an interesting detail. at
Did
the end.
anybody else, like, growing up in school, like, you have to take statistics or whatever in middle school, like, my math textbook wasn't allowed to call them dice, they were called number cubes.
Yeah, number cubes.
Yeah, and now you put on CNN and there's a thing at the bottom that says, bet on the headlines, Kalshi.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how we've gone down. but-
Degeneracy.
Maybe
Yes,
the Mormons
absolutely.
are right on that one.
Hey guys, Editor Max here. We had only planned on talking for like an hour about this movie, but like I just said, the movie is super long and we ended up talking for like 2.5 hours. So we're gonna split this in half right here. If you want to see the second half of this conversation, feel free to subscribe, follow along. It'll be up on YouTube pretty soon. Thank you guys for watching and take care. Go see the movie and watch our video because it's even better.